Lisa Lee. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of So Zoom In. Today, I will be speaking with Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. He is a composer, musician. I like to say he is pretty special. He is a holistic healer using sound frequencies, and I'm very excited to be having him on my show. And he is coming in just right about now. Thank you so much for joining me. It's nice to see your face.
Thanks for having me.
I was actually listening to some of your CDs earlier today. I didn't know you started off as a musician and composer.
Yeah, I have. You never know what's going to happen to you. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. I went to art school for 4 years in the 60s. I was an artist in the 60s. Do the math.
Well, I still are not.
A musician and a composer. I started playing guitar when I was 11. But I, would make music on anything I could find. My mom bought me my first guitar when I was 11 from a pawn shop. We were living in England at the time. I was a military kid. So.
Yeah.
But you just sort of never know what's going to happen. I was a filmmaker for a long time. Filmmaker, artist, sculptor. All of my sculpting work was cast molten metal. I was an expert mold maker, and I had a whole thing with metallurgy and making alloys and mixing metals. I kind of figured that was my replay of my alchemy years and past lifetimes or something.
Well, you're definitely a creative, which I love. How did you? Okay, first I have to ask, what kind of music did you like playing when you picked up your guitar? Was it rock and roll? Was it classical? Did you love playing everything?
Well, I was in the top sort of rock and roll band. I played lead guitar when I was in high school, and we cut a record, and then our venue tripled in size, and the girls were trying to tear my clothes off from the back door and running to the car. I had all that experience, then went off to art school, and eventually sold all that electronic equipment and bought myself a classical guitar and played classical guitar for 15 years. And I got deeply into Indian music. I bought myself a sitar, and I played sitar during that period in the 60s and early 70s. Anything with a string, piano, guitar, sitar, zither, auto harp, all those kind of things. So then I went off to, graduated and had a few jobs and started a couple of businesses, and 10 years later went to chiropractic school.
Oh, okay. All right. So you, so you've always been in tune to the body, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I went to chiropractic school. When I went to chiropractic school, I had never been to a chiropractor before. So that tells you a lot about me.
Well, what the school?
The reason I was going to chiropractic school was to learn the medical level of information about anatomy and physiology as part of my spiritual esoteric search. I mean, the body is a textbook of universal law. So I figured if I learned that level of information about it, I would get esoteric secrets I wasn't aware of, and that was absolutely true. I was also interested in knowing everything I could get my hands on about the brain and the nervous system, and the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the endocrine glands. So endocrinology and neurology were the two things I was really interested in. Why? Because that's where you would learn the most that you could learn about the chakra system.
Right.
The chakras is tapped into a spinal level, into a sympathetic nervous system chain, and it has linked with it a specific gland and a specific postganglionic neuron and a certain spinal level and a certain acupuncture meridian and all of that. And I certainly learned all that stuff. So, you know, and then in the process of that, at a certain point, um, academic work is over, you know, learning anatomy and physiology and lab science and
Mhm.
chemistry and physics and all that stuff. That's over. And the clinical part begins, you know, where you learn how to put all this information in practice,
Right.
a practical way to heal people. And you sort of get sucked in.
Right.
The next thing you know, I've been transformed from a civilian into a doctor, and um,
A little God status there,
you know,
right?
and then I get in practice, and uh, when you make the right decisions for your path, the
Mhm.
universe says yes to you and opens doors and turns lights green, and you bump into just the right person, and on and on and on. It becomes this thing that's bigger than you, you know. So after I graduated and passed the board exam, I had moved to Virginia where my parents were retired,
Mhm.
and took the board exam, started looking for a job. I was into all the weird stuff, the holistic stuff, and the craziest stuff you could think of. I was into, and so that's the kind of clinic I'm looking for. And
Mhm.
the possibilities of finding somebody in practice who would hire me in that kind of holistic environment is pretty slim. But I got a job in the largest holistic health center in the whole state of Virginia, where they were doing the most mind-boggling stuff. I mean, it was every holistic therapy you could think of under one roof. And
Mhm.
we were doing a biomagnetic therapy, and we had the first laser acupuncture system in the country, and the big news thing. And we had a blood lab for doing nutrition studies. Um, you know, it's just on and on like that. And it was in that atmosphere that I started exploring the use of sound frequencies for affecting the body and affecting the brain. That's when I went out and took out a loan and bought all this fancy equipment for my first recording studio in my spare room.
Right.
Made my first album, 1986. That was not because I was now transformed. I wasn't just a musician, I was a musician physician. So now the music had to have a scientific element. It wasn't good enough just to make nice, relaxing music. Now you had to have the music do something to your brain, and
Well, there
so
are there are certain codes that are chords that correlate with different parts of the chakra too, right? I mean,
there's frequencies. I mean, from a scientific standpoint, when you read the ancient documents,
mhm.
the sutras of Patanjali, almost 4,000-year-old Sanskrit texts, and the Vedas, where there's these descriptions of the chakras and their color and their sound and their quality and their emotion and all the other stuff that goes with each chakra.
Mhm.
Um, let's say that the heart chakra is green. Well, there's this law of the physics of acoustics, that if I have a wine glass and I want to make the wine glass vibrate, and I'm going to sing a certain note and make the wine glass vibrate,
Mhm.
um, I can ping that wine glass and hear the note. That's its fundamental resonant frequency. So I sing that note back, and if I hooked it up into a science lab, I could measure the precise frequency that the glass is ringing at, accurate to a couple of decimal points. And if I take that tone and I sing any octave of that tone, the wine glass will vibrate. That's called octave resonance. And if I sing any harmonic of that note, the wine glass will vibrate. That's harmonic resonance. And that theoretically works in both directions sort of forever.
Mhm.
So that means that if I um, sing that note higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, all those octaves are going to make it vibrate. But as sooner or later, I'm going to go above the top range of human hearing, 20,000 hertz. But I'll still be able to go double that and double that and double that, higher and higher octaves. They're just not sound anymore. And at 42 octaves higher, I emit millions of cycles per second, and that's color on the electromagnetic spectrum. So now it means that there's an exact color frequency that's an octave of the tone that makes the wine glass vibrate. So let's say that the wine glass is now your heart chakra, right? And we're flipping it around. We're saying now that the heart chakra is green. And so we're going to find the color spectra of green, and we're going to drop it by 42 octaves and generate a tone. Now we have the tone for your heart chakra. There's two problems there. Number one, in the universe, we've all been taught that the universe is made of, that everything in the universe is electromagnetic. And there's this elaborate electromagnetic scale of all things, from radio and television and X-rays and color frequencies and gamma rays and cosmic rays and photons and the electromagnetic effect from Einstein. All that stuff is what all this is, right? Except that's not true. The universe is sort of a yin-yang thing, where one of the yin-yangs is the electromagnetic spectrum, and the other one is pure energy moving through a medium and at a certain frequency. And when the frequency is between 20 and 20,000 hertz, we have a mechanism, and we call it sound. So there's electromagnetism and sound, two different forces. So when I'm at the color frequency of green, and I want to drop it down by 42 octaves to generate a tone, it doesn't work that way, because it's apples and oranges. One is electromagnetism and one is sound, and the way you measure the frequencies is completely different from each other. So you first of all have to do a mathematical conversion of the color frequency by multiplying it by the speed of light and doing some stuff, and then you've got the apples to apples, and then you can drop it down by 42 octaves. And if you don't do that, you make a big mistake. And that is the mistake that is made by just about everybody in this sort of new age community, where they assign certain tones to each of the chakras because they didn't make the mathematical conversion first. It's what separates the amateurs from the professionals. So you make a mistake, you know, it sounds good, but it's not correct. Then you got a second problem.
Yeah.
When you go up to the color spectra and you see all the colors are from 400 nanometers to 750, and it's all those colors, right? And someplace in there is green. But if you blew the green up in its range between 500 and 625 nanometers, right? There's an infinite number of shades of green there.
Right, exactly.
It's like infinite number of shades of green. It's only limited by the resolution of your equipment to measure the angstroms. So when we talk about the heart chakra is green, excuse me, what shade of green are you talking about? So I'll know what frequency to convert to the tone. You understand what I mean here? It's like it's, so I think you could say, okay, maybe we'll choose dead center green and we'll call that, but we have no idea that that's the color green that the ancients were seeing when they saw green or red for the, you know, or violet, or it's impossible to know. And then when you go, the third thing is everybody's chakras are unique to you.
Right.
Your heart chakra is a very specific color green that's related to the fundamental vibrational frequencies of you. Right. So your shade is unique. And on a bell curve study of 1,000 people's heart chakra, you might find that this group of people has their heart chakra very closely tuned to each other in a certain category. These people, this group is lime green, and this group is forest green, and you know what I mean? So when you start applying these things to scientific scrutiny, now it all starts to get into a whole different ballgame of what you're trying to do. And I've been down that road. I mean, I was on the faculty of a graduate school research center for 6 years. I was in the faculty of the California Institute for Human Science. And after I think 10, 12 years, I'm back there again. They invited me to come back. So I'm teaching there once more. But
Wonderful.
back then, there was, here's an example of this graduate school for PhD studies in psychotherapy and human science. That means that all this work I'm talking about, all this work I do is recognized by the state of California for PhD credits. And it's not just California, it's any college anywhere. But the fact that I can say that means that there's something good in the world.
Right.
These crazy ideas I'm talking about actually are credits in college.
Well, it's exciting. Well, it's valid work. I mean,
It's valid work. As long as you can back it up with science, it becomes valid. So here's an example of how this graduate school was functioning as a research center, and its focus was attempting to research the unresearchable. For instance, is it possible to scientifically measure the chi energy in the meridians and graph it on a computer? Answer is yes. The acupuncture meridian identification computer program developed at that school. Because chi energy in the meridians is just electromagnetic ions flowing through channels, and you can measure those with skin resistance meters and things like that. But the other one is it possible to measure the chakras, right? Subtle energy fields of the vortexes of the chakras. So far, nobody's been able to do that because the energy is too subtle for the grossness of our scientific instrumentation, right? So, but they've figured out a cool way of doing it, and it required a 100% electromagnetically shielded room. Now, this room is $25,000 room made for industry. It's made of copper, and it's copper floor, walls, ceiling, door, hermetically sealed door, special plate with ports so the computers are outside with instrumentation poked through a shielded port to the inside so no electromagnetic fields get in there. It's also 100% dark space, no photons. It takes 6 months to calibrate the room. And that's because when you stick something called a photon counter into this room, this little counter generates a single photon. You would never be able to see it. A single photon is like the smallest, microscopic atomic level of, of a light beam that is imperceptible. But this instrument shoots out one photon and counts how many photons come back. It should be one. If there's 10,000 coming back, you've got some kind of a leak in the room, either electromagnetic leak, because interactions of electrical fields generate photons and heat and energy, or you've got a light leak. So that's what you're doing to calibrate the room. Find the leaks and plug them up and fire up the photon counter again and see how many you get back until you get the industry standard of 60 photons. So you subtract 59 photons for any measurement you do. Okay, so now we got there. Of course, I'm going, oh, we've got this like cool room back here that's like electromagnetically shielded. I've never been in one. So after hours, I go run in and sneak into this room and close the door, shut all the lights off. And I'm in 100% dark space, which very few people have ever been in, no photons, no electromagnetic fields. And I'm waiting for the big, experience, and nothing's happening. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm like a new age failure. I'm not feeling anything, But when I finally opened the door and stepped out, that's when I felt it. It felt like you've been on a boat all day and you haven't gotten your land legs back.
Oh, wow.
It feels sort of like woozy or something. It's very weird. I could feel being bombarded after I had the absence, but I couldn't feel the absence. It was But that's just me. I mean, somebody else who's a psychic type goes in there and has, a cosmic consciousness experience or something. But the bottom line here is the whole reason this experiment is put together is to put a person in this room, close the door, shut the lights out, 100% electromagnetically shielded, and fire up the photon counter.
Oh.
And when you do that, you get a photon count coming off your body. All of us are glowing with photons coming off our body, and it's 1 photon per second per centimeter squared. So every little square centimeter all over your body has got 1 photon coming off every second. So you're sort of glowing with the background radiation of photons from the subatomic processes of life itself, interacting with physical matter, and the interaction causes the release of photons and heat and other forms of energy. So that's cool. But then you realize that there's 100 photons to 1,000 photons, 100 to 1,000 times more photons coming off of your body over the 7 chakra areas. So all of a sudden, oh,
wow, okay.
we have evidence that there's chakras there, but we can't measure them directly. We can measure their influence on physicality at a subatomic level, which releases photons. So that's what we're measuring. But how brilliant is that idea that we can't measure the subtle energy fields directly, but we can measure their effect on physical matter at a subatomic level. And that means that we're going to also be able to measure their relative balance with each other, right? The first chakra has 850 photons, per second. And the second chakra has got 500, and the third one has, 1,000. And the fourth one, the heart chakra, has 25. We're going, whoa, that's weird. Wonder if this person has a heart condition.
Right.
Now we've got 100 research projects we want to do. Let's get 100 heart patients and stick them in the room and see if they have a common factor with the heart chakra. And if so, can we measure people's chakras and pick up a future heart problem in the chakra field before it ever becomes physical?
Yes, you can.
Number 2, can we influence that heart chakra and fix it with some method like energy healing or Reiki treatments or intention or a sound frequency or a color frequency or right? That's the that's where world-class holistic research centers should be. That's what should be going on here. The kind of equipment that I need to do this kind of research is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
It's the kind of stuff that you only get in big time research projects. And the only people who end up ever getting access to that equipment is the pharmaceutical industry. Right? And this kind of work needs to move that forward because a drug approach to silencing your symptoms isn't the best approach. It's just the dominant approach. And the only reason it's a dominant approach is because it got big money behind it.
Well, it sounds like it would mess up your other chakras too. I mean, if you go to fix one thing, it messes something else up. So you're in a perpetual state of taking.
Everything is hyperlinked together, and one thing affects the rest. You tweak the spider web on one string, and the whole spider web resonates. It's.
Well, what I think is fascinating about frequency is it affects your whole essence, like your whole body. So even though you might be focusing on one thing, it's being felt throughout. Which,
in one sense, all the different systems in the body are tuned to harmonic relationships to each other. Right. So, just like that piano that I've got there behind me, when you look at a piano, when you open up the piano and you look down inside at the strings, all those different keys on the piano, the white and black keys, when you hit one of those keys, let's say I hit middle A at 440 hertz, I hit that key and I hear this note. But when I look into the piano for the A string, there's actually 3 strings. It's not just one. every single note of that piano has 3 strings, and they're all tuned in relationships to each other. And all of those notes, the black and white keys, are tuned to mathematical configurations of each other, and we call that music theory. When this specific frequency and that one are played together, the waveforms fit nicely together in a mathematical way that's pleasing to our ear, and that's harmonics. Why is it pleasing to our ear? Because the mathematics of harmonics and music theory is the same mathematics of the periodic table and the elements and the compounds that make my body. So someplace deep down in my collective unconscious mind, designed the whole universe based on the same principles that are on the keys on that keyboard. So when it's aligned properly and everybody fits together nicely, that's how my body fits together when it's healthy. That's how the universe fits together when it's working correctly.
And when it's not working correctly, there's a blockage in it.
It's harmonic frequencies that are bumping into each other and creating negative resonance and turbulence, destruction. It's unpleasant.
You can fix that though with frequency too, right?
You can tune things up. So that brings us to one of the basic sort of laws of physics that governs sympathetic resonance, and like why the wine glass would vibrate when I sing the right note. Why would that happen? Because of an underlying law called the science of coupled oscillators. And there was an amazing article on coupled oscillators in Scientific American that came out in December 1993. You can look it up. It's called Coupled Oscillators and Biological Synchronization. And this article is a mind blower because it's discussing an underlying law of the whole universe where everything in the universe, animate and inanimate objects, are drawn to each other to resonate together. So it's just that biological systems exhibit the finest degree of expression of this principle because we're alive and more responsive than a rock, but that means that my brain drives my system, and my brain is the most sensitive tissue of this system to express that principle. And that's why brain entrainment works. And it's my bio clocks are constantly looking in my environment for resonance and frequency to time my body processes to, because it saves energy to dance to a drum beat that's already beating than to invent my own drum beat moment by moment by moment. That takes a lot of extra energy that I don't want to waste. So if I can time myself to pulses in the environment that are already there, then I save energy, and everything in the universe is trying to do that. So if you did a Google search in videos for coupled oscillators, metronomes, you'll see these cool little videos where they've got these little cheap metronomes that are about this tall, the little, metronome thing going, and they've got like 25 of them laid out on a board in nice little rows. And somebody comes in and starts all these things going at random, and they're all like going all over the place. And all of a sudden, as you watch, they all start to line up. In less than 2 minutes, they all in just a minute and a half, they're all swinging together. It all happened by itself, according to this law of coupled oscillators. And so that means that when we have, if you and I were in the same room together, and we were closer than 6 feet to each other, the electromagnetic field of our heart extends out 6 feet. So our heart wave resonances and the electromagnetic fields would be mingling, and your body and my body would use each other as the sounding board to time ourselves to, and we had come up with a consensus resonance in the middle somewhere. And after a few minutes, our heart rates and respirations and blood pressure and brain waves would begin to synchronize up. And you've heard those tales of women who dorm together, start having their periods together. It's because your menstrual cycle is a little gland in your brain linked into your bioclocks that's sensitive to light-dark cycles. And the light-dark cycle you're timing yourself to is the full moon, new moon cycle, 28 and a half days. And if you're out of sync with that, we can synchronize you back by burning a little light bulb in your bedroom during the 2 weeks of the new moon, fooling your pineal into thinking that the full moon is still shining, and it resets the clock.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. All right, but I have to say, when you're together like that and you're sharing that energy, that uplifts the energy all around. Like it gives like a higher frequency all around, as opposed to when you're by yourself, or even like what we're doing on Zoom, we're keeping in preparation, right?
Well, yeah, and this is more powerful in a larger group.
Right.
So if I have a group of 20 people meditating together, then that becomes a very powerful influence, because everybody's biological process in the group will seek to find consensus.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody aligns to the same pulse place and aligns their brain waves, and it will accentuate if you physically touch each other. So if you and I were sitting in the same room and we held hands, it would be accentuated, because now we are linked together by an electromagnetic modem through skin conduction. And the electromagnetic pulses in my body from my heart waves and my brain waves and everything else would now seek to have a better connection. So you've got a room of 20 people sitting in a circle. I actually did this with big Fortune 100 companies. So the first company I did this with was Mattel. And it was based on my work with couples therapy. So I'll have a couple come in who are having trouble, and you'll sit in 2 chairs facing each other and hold hands. And that begins this process. My process with sort of a scientific approach of sound therapy, I use this system that I had created for me called real-time heart rate variability system. And heart rate variability is sort of a gold standard in medicine for its ability to predict death by disease, or death by heart attack in particular. In this case, it's measuring the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system, which is the master computer control system that tells all your body systems what to do. It's the master control. It's also the center of the fight or flight response. But I can hook you up to some wrist sensors on each wrist. The sensors communicate through your heart to each other. And on my screen, what pops up is I can see your sympathetic parasympathetic live on my computer screen. And what should happen is we should be living in this place of zero stress in the system. The clutch is pushed in, energy is back in my reservoir, and my body's working on its maintenance list to keep me alive and balanced and well. If I feel threatened, sympathetic turns on, mobilizes my energy into my muscle to fight for my life. That list is abandoned. The reservoir is emptied out. And when the threat is over, it comes back. Energy comes back. I start working my list. If I eat food, parasympathetic turns on, mobilizes my energy into my gut. When that's over, it comes back. I work on my list. That's kind of how the body's set up to work. And so now I'm going to lay a person down, hook them up and lay them down. And I see that when you lay down, within 3 minutes, everything should push in the clutch and be at zero.
Should.
And if it doesn't, if the sympathetic is still on after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it means that you have a runaway fight or flight response. And this is not good, because you're burning up all your resources and your healing program is disengaged, and you're no longer working on your maintenance list to fix things or balance things. And I believe that's the ultimate cause of disease. And so my innovation is there's a sound frequency that will return it to normal. And I don't know what sound frequency it is. So I've created a sweep of all sound frequencies from 20 hertz to 200 hertz, playing through your body through a special sound table with low frequency transducers that put the sound into your cells. So now you're laying there with all hooked up, and your sympathetic is stuck on in a fight or flight response. And I start this sound sweep that's slowly untuning the frequencies. And as the sound gets to the sweet spot for you, I can see autonomic nervous system responding to that by collapsing its stress down until it comes to this point. And my computer program will grab the frequency that made this happen. Okay. Now I have a scientific validated frequency accurate to a couple of decimal points that anytime I play this frequency, it pushes in the clutch of your autonomic nervous system and returns it to normal. So we're going to do a therapy session with that. We're going to give it to you to listen to with headphones every day. And what essentially you're doing is going to a gym to exercise a zero stress function in your autonomic nervous system to return it to normal.
How long?
And have your internal physician program work out his own problems from the inside out, because God does the healing and the doctor collects the bill, right? I'm not the doctor here. I'm the physician's assistant. And under the hood of your body is the doctor, and your rational thinking mind, who doesn't have a clue what's going on under the hood, is the patient. Right. So
okay, so
now I've got the couple facing each other holding hands.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to break that by having you let go of one hand. And I'm going to splice my computer into this circle by putting one wrist sensor on his wrist and one on her wrist. And now there's 3 holding hands, him and her and the computer. And I'm going to fire the computer up, and it has to go through both of their bodies in order to complete the circuit. And when the screen pops up, the sympathetic dominance thing I'm seeing is the autonomic nervous system of the entity of your relationship.
Oh, wow.
It's who the two of you are as a personality together. There's a personality arises out of your relationship, and you can represent it on this screen, and you can see the stress level between the two of you. And I'm going to treat your entity as a person and do the sound sweep until this collapses. I just scientifically collapsed the barrier that's separating you from each other and returning you to the place you were when you fell in love, because love comes from essence.
Right. Wow.
Love is sickness, right? So now we can do that in a group. And this brings us back to Mattel. So you didn't think I was going to get back there, did you?
I love how this comes around.
So now we're back to Mattel, and I'm being hired to boost creativity and problem solving and lateral out of the box thinking so we can come up with new ideas for toys, right? And so I've got these 20 top designers at Mattel sitting in a circle with their shoes and socks off, scooted in until their knees touch. So we've got physical contact to enhance the coupled oscillator connection. But since your legs are crossed and you've got no shoes and socks on, when you scoot close enough for your knees to touch, the bottoms of your feet all touch, right? It's like Dr. Thompson's mingling of the souls. But and then I'm going to have everybody cross their hands over and hold hands as well. So now I've got a double braided electromagnetic connection that pushes the envelope of the coupled oscillator phenomenon naturally already. And now I'm going to take 2 of those people in that circle and separate them apart from each other and splice in my 2 wrist sensors. So now the HRV computer has to go through every single person's body to get around to complete the connection. And when the screens pop up, now what I see is the stress that exists in the group entity that only exists when this group is together.
Oh, wow.
It's like going to a dinner party. You've got 6 people at dinner, and one person has to leave early.
Right.
Well, the whole atmosphere changes, right? The personality of the group is now different. Or if a new person shows up late and they come in and sit down, atmosphere changes, new entity just arrived, right? So now I'm going to take the entity, I'm going to see the stress, I'm going to do the sound sweep, I'm going to watch this collapse to zero. I just scientifically collapsed the barrier that prevents all these people from playing together and being creative.
And it's that, yes.
We know that creativity happens in theta brain activity, the same activity you go into when you're dreaming and creating a whole universe with all its laws and don't know it's a dream. That's creativity, by the way. But so I'm going to entrain your brainwaves to theta and put headphones on, because when I put headphones on with binaural beats to entrain your brainwaves, it forces your right left hemispheres to synchronize. And synchronizing of the hemispheres is exactly where your brain goes when you access new ideas and solve problems. So we just picked a lock of creativity in the zone it goes to access new ideas. For me, it's like falling off a log. I'm not going to let them know that. This is a very complex process here. But it is a complex process unless you know what you're doing. But
also,
so what happened is they won Innovative Toy Design of the Year, and I ended up on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And they made, hundreds of millions of dollars in, and I'm questioning how much did I charge?
So, how quickly does the effect take? I mean, is it instantaneous, or does it happen over a course of several sessions?
This thing?
Yeah, from here to
happens in a couple of minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that married couple that went to you, were they?
But so that's a good question. On a bell curve, I'd say within 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But on the edge of the bell curve, out here at the 20%, we may have a couple that has been in trouble for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's going to take longer. It might take 10 minutes for the system finally to let go. Right? Wow. And that gives me information. Oh, this couple is really stuck. It's going to take a little bit more work to get this straightened out.
So when someone does that and they're in a relaxed state when this is happening, and that, do you see a relaxation in their body? Do you see a shift happening in their physical body when that's happening, or is it?
Well, I mean, I'm monitoring real time during a session what's going on in the autonomic nervous system, which is master control that monitors all systems in the body. So if there's any stress any place in the body, it's going to be reflected here.
Right.
So if this is zero, everybody's zero.
So
because this is telling everybody what to do. So if you have some kind of liver congestion or problem with your kidney or something like that, it's not your liver's fault. Because no system in your body works autonomously. Everybody is under the direction of master control, who's supposed to be synchronizing everybody's functions together in a grand orchestral music piece, right? And so if this has a problem and it's not telling the liver what to do, the liver is faltering and having a problem and sending out signals. But it's not the liver's fault. It's who tells the liver what to do. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well,
so I could find a frequency specifically for the liver, like a wine glass, and I could boost the cells of the liver to increase its healing.
Right.
But there's bigger fish to fry. Why is the liver falling down? Because I better fix that too, or I didn't go deep enough. I can do sound healing just on the liver and fix that liver up, but it's going to fail again because this is where the problem is. Further up the road of who tells everybody what to do is where the error is. So we have to fix it here too. We might do both.
Right. That's so fascinating. Okay. How about, I know autism has been on the rise for the past several years. Would something like this help an autistic person?
Neurological conditions has been my specialty, particularly in children since the beginning. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, all of these kind of conditions have commonalities within them. But for instance, autism has very specific things that go on in the brain that can be fixed. It's a functional aberration, and it has a number of different causes. But the end result is we have difficulty of pathway communication between the hemispheres.
Mhm.
They're not communicating properly with each other. We may have some communication difficulties within a hemisphere itself, where the lines of communication between neurons aren't quite up to par for some reason. In addition, we have difficulties with certain brain waves, and all the different types of brain waves that that your brain generates.
Mm.
Each has special duties. So in autism, we have a very specific brainwave that doesn't work well. It's called mu, M-U. Not many people have heard of mu unless you're an EEG researcher or a crazy guy like me.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Mu is somewhere between 9 and 11 hertz. Now, normally that would be associated with alpha brain activity. But this is a different waveform completely. It looks different, it is different, and it's called mu. And mu is something called the mirror neurons. It's how you learn socialization skills. So in the sensory cortex in my brain, where all the information comes in and gets seen, and then the motor cortex sends signals back out to my body to make me move and do stuff. The sensory cortex that's receiving signals is where this mu activity takes place. So when I'm an infant, and you're my mother, and you're gesticulating with your hand when you talk to me, and you're talking in a sing-song voice, and you're inflecting your voice and making facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. All of the, the infinitudes of body communication, body language, and facial expression and tone of voice and all that stuff, we have to learn what that stuff means. And how we learn is when you move your hands and make your face, I see that. And that sensory information is going to this area of my cortex. And the areas in my cortex that would have to be involved for me to move my hands or move my face the same way you are actually light up. It mirrors what you're doing. All of the facial muscle contractions and tone of voice and body movements are mirrored here. And the function of how it mirrors is this mu function, the mirror neurons. And that's how it burns those pathways in my brain and links what it means: facial expression, tone of voice, socialization skills. And autistic kids have that deficient. And the higher up the spectrum you go, the more deficient it becomes until it's absent completely. Where the kid won't look at you. They won't look at you in the eyes because they don't even recognize your body as something that's more important than the wall, because that part didn't get learned. But because it's functional, you can use brainwave entrainment to mu to retrain it. Because every time you put the headphones on with mu brain entrainment, it forces that activity to take place. And it's neuroplasticity. You're going to a gym, you're exercising mu function until it's back up to par. And as it's exercising over the weeks and the months, socialization skills start to come back. The kid will all of a sudden start looking you in the eye, notice that you're there, begin to learn what different things mean. There's something called gamma brain activity, some of the cutting edge of neuroscience. Gamma brain activity is a 40 hertz sort of hum going on in the brain, underlying all the other brain activity, beta, alpha, theta, delta, that's always kind of going on there. But underlying all of that is gamma. And gamma is called the binding frequency. What it does is it binds together all the sensory information from my 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, smell. All of those are in different areas of the cortex where they're processed. Gamma pulls them all together into a single place and binds them all up together and synchronizes all of those sensory information together. So that my experience out here in the world makes sense. If something drops, if something slides off the desk and hits the floor and smashes, we all know that the motion that we saw belongs to the sound that we heard.
Right.
But that's only because gamma is binding it together up here, and we now know that they belong together. But if gamma was disentangled, wasn't doing that job properly, we wouldn't necessarily equate the motion we saw and the sound we heard. In its extreme, you might look upon that as schizophrenia, where if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And you go someplace in your brain and you pull out a little Blu-ray and stick it in and play a little movie of you making breakfast or eating breakfast. It's a movie you're watching. It's a theta brain function. Because theta is where you go when you imagine things, right? So it's a theta brain function. It's a movie. And if you had a schizophrenia and that wasn't integrated, you'd be thinking that you're seeing hallucinations.
Oh, wow.
You don't see it as hallucination when you remember yourself making breakfast because it's integrated.
Right.
Somebody's integrating it. And the same thing with the little voices always talking in your head, right? There's a little dialogue of Sophia talking to herself all the time, right? But that's only because this is integrating it and you know what that voice means. But if this was not, you'd be hearing voices. It wouldn't be integrated. And you can retrain that back, right? You can retrain that function back.
That sounds so much better than taking drugs. It sounds like.
Well, don't get me started there because drugs are, nobody's trying to do a cure there. For instance, blood pressure medication. I'm taking blood pressure medication because my blood pressure is high. Yeah, but this is my mother when she was in her 80s, after my father died. She all of a sudden, for the first time in her life, had high blood pressure. Her blood pressure was always low. Now it's high. And it's taking 3 separate medications to control it. And one time she comes to me and she goes, how come my blood pressure is high all of a sudden? I never had high blood pressure. Why is it high? Mom, that's how your physical body is dealing with Dad's death.
Right. Yeah.
And then she's going, well, I hate this medication because it makes me feel weird. And I've got these weird symptoms showing up. And, I'd be happy to take the medication to prevent me from having a stroke or a heart attack. But as long as somebody's digging down to find out why I've got the high blood pressure and fix that so I don't have to take the medication anymore. And I'm going, Mom, that's not the plan in modern medicine. Nobody's digging to find out why you got high blood pressure. Right. The blood pressure medication is artificially controlling it, and that's the fix. That's it. Yeah. That's all they're offering. Nobody's looking. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, excuse me, but if the medication is the cure for my high blood pressure, doesn't that mean that I was born with a congenital lack of medication? Right? Your problem is you were born without enough pills, boy.
But sound therapy, what you do could actually help balance that, right? So you don't need to.
Well, so let's take that as an example. So the typical person that I see who comes to me, yeah. It's not really fair because I'm the witch doctor at the end of the trail that people come to after they've tried everything else. I mean, people try
first.
So I see these gnarly conditions, but this person comes in, I lay them down on their back, I hook them up, and the sympathetic is just cranked on. Typical. I'm expecting that. I'm going to do a sound sweep, collapse it down, but this has been going on for a while. Some people it's been running for 30 years, and they've got all kinds of conditions and all kinds of symptoms, and they look like a basket case. But if you pick apart what happens when the sympathetic turns on, when the fight or flight takes place, what happens is the reservoir empties out and goes into my muscles to fight for my life. I pull 100% of available energy from every place in my body, because if I don't and I die, then I die like an idiot because I didn't give it my full attention, So the body is all in when I think I'm being threatened. So it's going to pull all the energy from my gut and from my elimination system and from my immune system, from my higher brain centers. So my concentration memory is messed up. Can't quite digest my food properly. I can't eliminate toxins properly. My immune system is messed up. And it's going to kick my adrenal glands, raise my blood pressure, and adrenaline suppresses pancreatic function to liberate extra glucose. So I'm super strong to fight for my life. So by definition, if I'm running this fight or flight response all the time, I have high blood pressure and high blood sugar, the two biggest prescriptions in Western medicine. Pre-diabetes pills and blood pressure medication, and at least 60% of it is misdiagnosis completely. It's got nothing to do with your heart. It's got to do with running adrenals all the time because sympathetic is on all the time. It's not even my adrenals' fault. They're just following orders of what you do when you're running a fight or flight response. So if I use my sound waves to collapse this, it takes the pressure off the adrenal glands. They return to normal. My blood pressure comes back down. My blood sugar comes back down. And the medications I took this morning dropped my blood pressure through the floor and my blood sugar through the floor. So it's my biggest problem. If you're taking medications, you need to know that if this normalizes, you're going to be suffering the overdose symptoms of a medication you don't need.
So you don't need to take it then. You can.
No, you don't need that, and you never needed it in the first place. There's nothing wrong with your heart. There's nothing. And what's even weirder is that the way they're controlling the blood pressure is not by giving you a medication that even affects your heart. The medication affects your kidneys. It's a diuretic. It's affecting the kidney's ability to handle the fluids of the blood, which affects the heart. So if you take it for long enough, what does it do? Side effect? Kills your kidneys. Who are most of the people in dialysis? People who got their kidneys killed by their blood pressure medication. This is called iatrogenic illness caused by your doctor. You know, I'm on my couch watching my favorite show on TV when the smoke alarm goes off. So they prescribe earmuffs. That's not good enough, so they do an operation and remove the batteries. Now the fire has worked its way into my living room, is burning up my couch, and I've got second-degree burns on my arm, so they prescribe cortisone cream. I mean, that's modern medicine.
So how can people come see you first? I mean, someone like you with what you do, you know about the meridians, you know about the energy. Yeah. How do we put it out there?
That's a cosmic question. I mean, I don't know. There are a lot of, I mean, I guess it's because, you know, you sort of have to, the information has to come across your desk. Hey, you know, there's this guy who knows all this stuff. If you didn't see that come across your desk, or somebody didn't tell you or didn't bump into it somehow, you wouldn't know, right? So for me, one of the big boosts was the Heal documentary.
Right, which is available on Amazon Prime, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and it was, you know, it was a big hit. It was a surprise hit. But when you look at where the world is at, it's not a surprise at all, because it was about a holistic approach to healing, which is what we're talking about. And that stress is the ultimate cause of disease. And, you know, I'm in the film and I'm like the science guy, the guy with the computer screen, all this stuff I'm describing, you can see on the computer screen. See somebody laying on my sound table getting a treatment. And so everybody's calling me up because I saw this film. And then it gets taken up by Netflix. Now we got 200 million people. And my phone's ringing off the hook. And now a bigger fish in the ocean ate the smaller fish, and Amazon Prime just got it from Netflix. And now there's an additional 200 million people, and my phone is ringing out the hook again. But that's sort of how it works. And what's behind all that? It's all bigger than any of us. I mean, I'm just doing my thing. And the universe comes in and points a camera and puts a thing out, and the next thing I know, it's, you know, bigger than me.
I think what you're doing is needed more now than ever. I think
People
people are so much fear right now of what's happening. I think people really don't want to go to the hospital. They want to, go to someone who can help them deal with whatever it is without, having anything injected into them. I think more and more people are waking up to that. So what you're doing is
Even
crucial.
my mother, when she was 85 years old, could get it. She got it. It was like, this blood pressure medication isn't fixing what's wrong. I'll be happy to take it while somebody tries to figure out what's going on. But when she finds out that nobody's even trying to do that, it's a shocker.
Well,
And that's the reason I think that that the Heal documentary was so popular, is because it is the conversation
right.
that is arising. And that conversation is a powerful one that's emerging, where people in general are thinking, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense to me. Covering over the symptoms doesn't seem to be handling my issue.
Right.
There's got to be an answer that's deeper. And out of that conversation comes somebody who makes a film that expresses that collective unconscious idea and becomes this film. And then when the film goes out into the theaters, everybody applauds it and says, yes, yes, that's what we're talking about. And it's part of a movement of awakening that is even bigger than health, because ultimately the biggest healing responses that I see in the patients are when you wake up this internal physician program and it can start working and untangling things from the inside out. That's the only place that healing can ever come from. And a holistic physician is not somebody who's supplying the healing, but removing the blockages for the internal healing ability to take place. So when the biggest healings happen, you'll start to see physical detoxification experiences happen. And then you'll see emotional detoxification things take place. And then you'll see mental detoxifications take place, self-defeating belief systems. But the real meat and potatoes happens when you have a spiritual revelation, where we're all
Right.
fated to walk some path in our lives.
Right.
And that path is always going to lead to a fork. So my fate is to walk this path that leads to a fork. And when I arrive at the fork, my fate is to make a free will decision. I'm fated to make a free will decision, this path or that path. And this path is the yearning of my soul that says, take that path, take that path. And my small mind is looking at that path and going, I don't see how I'm going to make my life work if I go that way. How am I going to make it work? And meantime, the other path is the path of safety. Get a job, work for retirement. All the adults in your life are whispering in your ear, grow up and get a job. And when I make that decision, the pain begins. That's where the disease begins, because I've stepped off of the path of the journey of my soul to find out why I'm here. The great journey of spirit, the heroic journey of all time, has been abandoned. And I'm walking in a little circle over here, which is alarm clocks, traffic jams, job, alarm and traffic jam, and dinner, and go to bed and wake up the next day for the rest of your life until you die. That's the path of illness and sickness and death. And when patients come to that point where they teleport back to the very first time in your life you ever made that decision instead of this one, what's behind it is fear. I look at this path of my soul and I go, I don't see how I'm going to make that work. I'm afraid. I don't think I'm going to be taken care of. I might end up on the street. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen to me. This seems to be at least some logical way to figure out that, I've got a job, I can save some money and I can work for retirement and I can see a path where I'll be safe. But we all know there's no safety there. There's no safety there. And underlying that fear is the deep issue, the ultimate issue. And that issue is, do I believe that the universe is a hostile environment where I have to fight tooth and claw for my little spot and then defend it? Or is the universe a beneficent place whose sole duty is to say yes to me when I make the right decision and open the doors as if by magic and turn the lights green and bump me right into the right people I need to know? It's bigger than me. And so when small mind goes, I don't see how I'm going to make that work. Excuse me, that was never your job. That's not your job to figure out how it's going to work. That's the universe's job. Your job is to make the dumbed down decision. I'm going to make this one. I'm going to step forward courageously on faith that the universe will be here, because I believe the universe will be here for me when I make those decisions. And now the ball is in the universe's court, and it better deliver. But it always does. It's inscrutable. And now your life is a mind-blowing adventure where you can start out as an art student in the 60s and end up here talking to you, surrounded by all this crazy stuff, being some doctor. I mean, I could never presuppose I was going to end up here unless I took that path and watched this amazing adventure kind of unfold around me. You know, day after day, week after week, month after month. My life has been an amazing life. It's just been this sort of mind-boggling thing that Hollywood would reject the script because it's too unbelievable. You know,
I'll write it.
I'm the only one. Anybody who does that, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's amazing. And in that process is me finding out who I am. And part of that is finding out my dark part, the part I'm here to work on. And as I work and fix that, disease goes further away from me. And I enter more into a joyful state, a state of gratitude, a state of where I start to understand that the really important things in life are, who do I love and who loves me back? The rest is a stage set. It's something from here. All of this other stuff works with that, but the joy of your soul is recombining. I mean, back in the most ancient literatures, back in the Vedas, you know, we're talking about in a hypothetical time before sort of God existed, or Atman, or Brahma, whatever word you want to put there. Before time, there's this infinite bliss state. Goes on forever. It's always been here. It will always go on. And bliss all by itself with no opposite has no meaning. The only way you can know that you're happy is if you've had sad experiences to know what happiness means. COVID and the world closing down, right? All of a sudden, we all learned something about the importance of being together, being in physical proximity in another person's energy field. Because we've had a year and a half of being electronically connected like you and I are right now. It's okay. It's better than a phone call. It's better than a letter, but it's not the same. It's at least I can see your facial expressions and body language, and you know, but I can feel something in your energy field that goes deeper than that. So now all of a sudden I understand at a new level the importance of that. And that's going to change the world. It's already changing the world. We've already got a good dose of realizing the people in your life are the most important thing. The experiences of direct communication and being able to touch someone is important.
It's crucial.
It's essential. And so that will modify most of us in the world and how we are in the world. But
right. Well, are you still taking patients? Are you still taking in new people?
I'm semi-retired. I see patients 2 days a week, and I tend to be booked up
I can imagine.
weeks in advance. So
do you know people who do what you do?
I train people.
Oh, you do train people. Okay.
As a matter of fact, next week I begin my next intensive training course for biotuning practitioners with the computer screen and the sound waves and all the other stuff.
Yeah. And you give workshops online.
I do day-long workshops in overviews of sound, sound and expanding consciousness, sound and healing, how you can use the sounds that are on my website to enhance your practice or enhance your life at home. Or I have sound tables and sound chairs to deliver the sounds into your body. So all those soundtracks that are on my website are actually designed to play your body as well as your mind, but you wouldn't know it unless you had a sound table.
So you need a sound table to listen to the CDs, or can you just listen to them?
No, you can just listen with headphones. Most people buy CDs and listen with headphones, but have no idea that if they had a sound table, a new dimension of the experience would happen, because that same soundtrack is designed to play through your body.
Now, what is a sound table? What exactly is a sound table? Is it like
so I have so I just designed my own sound table because the sound tables out there in the market don't fill the needs of what I'm trying to accomplish. So that the sound table needs to be right-left stereo separation. So it's basically, let's say that you've got one of the table models is like a massage table that's got these special designed low frequency transducers attached to the bottom. So the sound table is like an 1/8-inch thick hardwood sounding board that you're laying on top of, that's upholstered, looks like a massage table. You're laying on the sounding board with a cushion, and underneath, attached to the sounding board, is this big speaker. But it's not a speaker, because the speaker has the cone thing. The cone's removed and the vibrational part is attached to the board. And now the vibration of these 4 transducers, right, left, stereo, is driving the vibrations right into your cells. So you're feeling it.
Wow.
And that same sound is what's in your headphones. So now you're hearing what you're feeling. And the reason it has to be right, left, stereo is because I'm using a lot of 3D processing. Sounds are kind of moving around, and binaural beats where we have 2 tones slightly out of tune. And it's essential that this ear not hear what this one is hearing. So my sound table is split down the middle, so it's headphones for your body. As soon as you put headphones on with binaural beats, it forces the synchronicity of the hemispheres. So if I do that on the table, it forces the neurons that process vibration sense in my body to do the same thing. And the more of the synchronicity thing I can do in the nervous system, the better it can function, and the happier it is, and the more efficient the whole system becomes, and the easier it is to heal.
How often are you supposed to do a session like that? Or is it something you do every day, or can do every day, or is it something that is based on whatever?
Well, I mean, now you're sort of into the logistics of reality. People come back to my clinic to be on the sound table for a session, and sort of I'm monitoring and checking them out each time to see how they're doing. Once every week to every few weeks. And sometimes that's dictated by me testing you out to find out how soon you need to come back. And other times it's money constraints. I can only afford to come back once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks or whatever. Half the people that come to me are not even from the US, they're from around the world. So they fly in. And in that case, I will be able to measure them and do a couple of treatments before they leave forever, and I'll never see them again. So all of their treatments from that point on are headphones, unless they were to buy a sound table or something for themselves. But a sound table is about $2,500, and that's a little more expensive than most people would want to spend or could spend.
But I was thinking, if you have someone's child has autism, or someone who has cancer, and you want to take alternate routes, it actually sounds a lot cheaper than doing all this other type of.
And it tends to be how it pans out. If you have a life-threatening disease, then it behooves you, to pull out all the stops and do the extraordinary steps that you normally wouldn't think of doing, where you might consider spending $2,500 to have a sound table at your home and do this every day. But everybody's got their story and what they can do and what they can't do. And as a practitioner, I deal with that every week. And we do the best we can do around what your situation is. But at the bottom line, there's every aspect of your life is intertwined together. And the money in your life is part of your symptom picture, because money is just energy. So on one half of that coin is Caesar, and on the other hand, half of that coin is a talisman of power in a metaphysical realm. And how I deal with that metaphysical element of power in my life dictates what the other side of the coin gives me. So people who come in who've got the most screwed up problems and the least amount of ability to pay, part of what we have to deal with is, why is there no money in your life? Why is there no energy in your life? Why is there no love in your life? Why is there no health in your life? Where is that coming from? That's what we're here to solve, to figure out. That's what I mean by a true holistic approach. It's everything. It's every aspect of your life that contributes to why you're not feeling well and why it's not working for you. Because if you are dead center in the core of your path, your spirit path, and you're doing that successfully, then all these things line up.
Right. It does, yeah.
For everyone that doesn't line up, there's a block someplace that you're here in this physical body at this particular period of time to learn. That's what you're here to move through and figure out. It's the grand journey. It's like, back into sort of Tibetan Buddhism, in the Vedas, there's a discussion about, like I was about to say before, in the period of time before time, and it was infinite bliss. And bliss has no meaning without its opposite. And if you're God and you're infinite and forever bliss, then you have to artificially create the opposite by taking what I call a vacation from godhood. And poof, here we all are, right? This is what a vacation from godhood looks like, where God divides into an infinite number of finite pieces, an infinite number of shards of the personality of God, And each one of those shards coalesces into a being, you and me and everything else that's alive, which represents one little tiny sliver of the total personality of God. And then all of those shards are caused immediately to forget who they are. And all of them enter into the grand heroic journey to find out the true nature of myself. And if that's true, the beauty of that is every person I meet, I'm meeting you now, and I'm getting to witness another aspect of the personality of the Godhood. You are part of God's personality now, presenting to me, now stepping forward into my life for some reason. I don't know why. That's why I say yes. Sophia calls me on the phone. A sliver of God calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, I'd like to interview you." I always say yes. God's on the phone. Yeah, I'll say yes to that. I'll see what this little personality part looks like, and maybe I'll learn something. I mean, nothing is an accident. The reason you're here in my life is to show me something that I don't know yet. So bring it on.
Well, I've been a fan for quite a long time, and so I'm grateful for social media for that. I appreciate everything you do, and you do so much for so many people, and I want more people to know about you, and know that there are holistic methods to even just discover who you are. You don't have to get caught up in the blockages that society wants us to be caught up in.
Yeah, I do have one extension of what I talked about with the couples therapy and the Mattel story. it appears as if like the whole world seems to be corrupted. As soon as money is involved, it's all corrupt. Governments are corrupt and businesses are corrupt. And I mean, it seems like everything is corrupt. It's like the whole world was stolen by bad guys for so long ago that they've dug their heels in it. It's like pretty impossible to legislate yourself out of this jail. But all of us are rising up. Something is awakening, and we're shaking the cage and going, how the hell do we get out of this jail? And besides that, this is a collective unconscious decision. This world is generated from us. We make this world. So this is an external projection of our collective unconscious mind. Why are we choosing this messed up mess? Because this is the collective dark place we need to see and move through. We need to find out how to eradicate the darkness, how to come in terms with the darkness. This is the grand eternal struggle of the light and dark, and we're in the midst of it right now in a big time energetic way. And it seems to me that with all of the discoveries in quantum physics about the nature of reality, that reality is a consensus vote of a collective unconscious mind. And if we could gain control of the collective unconscious mind and what it wants and what it wants to project, then we could change the world in like a spontaneous remission. 1 second the cancer's there, the next second it's gone, and people are scratching their head going, maybe we're looking at the wrong X-ray, but because that's Newtonian physics and this is quantum physics where things pop in and out of existence, time goes forwards and backwards, all kinds of weird stuff happens. So there have been attempts in the past, ancient past, to change reality with the force of numbers. Monks meditating together, 2 or more in the Christian tradition, 2 more gathered in his name, has the power to open the door to the Holy Spirit coming down. So the magic number was always 12. There's always the master with the 12 disciples. The real number is 13, the minimum number necessary to create what you might call the 100th monkey effect, where the anthropologists are studying these little monkeys on an island, surrounded by little islands of monkeys. And one day they see this grandmother monkey who washes her sweet potato in the river to wash the dirt off before she eats it. And the little monkey sees her doing that. Pretty soon that monkey's washing his potato, and other monkeys, monkey see, monkey do. Pretty soon all these monkeys are washing the potatoes on this little island. And when the minimum number of monkeys are washing potatoes, magic thing happens, and all monkeys on all islands instantaneously are washing their potatoes, and they've never made contact with each other. It's spooky action at a distance. It's a quantum field effect. And now we've got the ability to push the envelope of that idea because of the precision that we have in instrumentation, in brain entrainment, in binaural beats, in soundtracks, in the internet. Now we can connect thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, millions of people together in the same conscious space, use headphones with a binaural beat brain entrainment soundtrack that everybody listens to at the same time. And for the first time in our biological evolution, we can precisely scientifically align everybody's brainwaves exactly to the same place. Because when you see the kind of organizations where, okay, we're going to have World Peace Day, we're going to have 10,000 people all meditating together for world peace. Excuse me, but that's like herding cats. Everybody might be sitting on a cushion with their legs crossed, but everybody's mind is in a different place. Who knows where everybody is? And we need everybody to be focused together on this idea that the current reality that we're experiencing needs to change, and it needs to be replaced with something else. The question is, what do you want? What kind of world do you want? And when you think about it, you realize, you know what? I've never thought about it before. I've got some fuzzy idea about bucolic, utopian, but I never really nailed it to what exactly do I want? Because from the standpoint of quantum physics, God says, hey, you can have anything you want. All you got to do is ask for it, without words, before a thought, from here.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm doing with my live streams. Global mind link with entrainment to everybody's brainwaves to precisely the same place to change the quantum field. How's that for nuts?
I love it. I
And
love
it's an
it.
experiment. It's an experiment. Why
Life
not put it to the test? What's the downside? The downside is doing nothing and having the world we got. You know, so if you like, can you see this?
Yes. Okay.
That is the address where you can go to my YouTube channel to see all the live streams that I've done.
Okay, great.
I do them every Sunday at 12:30.
Every Sunday at 12:30. I will definitely.
12:30 California time, except for this next 2 Sundays because I'm teaching my biotuning practitioners training, so it'll be moved to Monday instead of Sunday for the next 2 weeks.
Jason, I'm so grateful to have you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thanks for having me.
You're
Thank
wonderful, and people definitely need to know what you're doing. So,
Yeah,
so
thanks.
thank you.
By the way, there's a there's a 2-part Gaia News piece on what I do.
Oh.
And it's really well done on the nature of sound and what I'm doing with sound, and you can see my screens, and it's more of an explanation. And they also have shot a 10-part series on sound that will start airing in April. And I'm in every one of those episodes. So that's also something to look forward to. They did an awesome job. I mean, they've got
Gaia
Gaia News. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
All right.